I feel like I owe so much to EACUBO and to all the regionals and EACUBO for that matter. I truly don't think I'd be where I am in my career if it wasn't for the networking. It's helped me to be more aware. These organizations really have helped make me the person I am.
It's incredibly rewarding. And like Sara, I would not be where I am in my career if it hadn't been for the relationships that I built through EACUBO. You know, this is incredibly necessary, I think, and especially where we're going.
Every association has its public face. The sessions, the keynotes, continuing education, hallways buzzing with conversations. But just beneath the surface sits something much more powerful. A rotating cast of volunteers who give shape to an organization's identity simply by showing up, by taking a turn, and then handing the baton to whoever comes next. At the EACUBO annual meeting, Howard Teibel sat down with outgoing chair Romayne Botti and incoming chair Sara Thorndike, two leaders who represent different stages of that cycle. Their conversation captures the heart of the ongoing experiment of leading a professional community through change. Both have spent years navigating the pressures inside higher education, shrinking labor pools, shifting expectations around work, the tug of war between in-person connection and digital convenience. And both of them talk candidly about how those forces have reshaped the work of the association. What emerges is a portrait of leadership as a shared craft. It's one that depends on listening, on knowing when to say yes and when to say no, and on recognizing that growth often comes from stepping into spaces that offer no formal authority, but abundant opportunity. In the rhythm of that handoff, you can see the quiet continuity that keeps communities like EACUBO alive and thriving. And now, Howard Teibel with Romayne Botti and Sara Thorndike.
Thank you, Pete. Welcome, Sara and Romayne. How you feeling?
I'm great.
Great.
We are in the middle at the moment of the EACUBO annual meeting in 2025. And we just came out of an incredible keynote session about non-promotable work. And I would love to give voice to this, just even to get this thing started. The conversation about how we can support ourselves to be focusing on the things that we care about, the things we want to be involved in. I'm curious if you have anything to say that you got from that session.
For me, I tend to be one of those people that has a hard time saying no to things when asked. And I think what I've learned more recently, and I learned it from somebody who shared it with me at EACUBO, if you're saying yes to one thing, by default, you're saying no to something else. That could be no to family time or no to personal time or no to other opportunities. And so it's okay to say yes to a lot, but just being selective, that it's the right thing for you to say yes to, both for that organization, but also for yourself. So I'll just share a really fast example. I'm on a lot of boards. I get asked to participate a lot. And it's really hard for me to say no. But just recently, someone asked me to be on a board. And the first thing I did is I looked at the schedule and thought, is this going to take away from all the other commitments that I've made to other boards? And is that fair to them? And when I looked at the overlap, there was too much overlap. And honestly, they didn't need me on that board. I wasn't a subject matter expert. It wasn't necessary. And it was the first time I said, nope, this isn't going to be for me. So it was hard, but it was the right thing to do. And so I think it's because I'm always a big believer. I've learned so much from saying yes, that this one I needed to say no to.
What'd you get from that?
Well, I thought the session was really timely. And with all of us feeling overwhelmed and stretched in our roles, having an opportunity to sit back and reflect on, what are those things that we're doing that maybe we shouldn't be doing, and they're taking time away from more important work that we could be doing. I've known Laurie Weingart for a long time, and she's an expert in negotiation and teams, and so I know some of her other work as well. And, the Linda Babcock, her colleagues, the Women Don't Ask book, these are all things that, from being around them, I've been made aware of, and just really trying to think about how I think about my own navigating my career pretty well. One thing that I talked about with some colleagues after is that in a higher ed environment and this shifting of the non-promotable tasks, there are a lot of times that the staff take on non-promotable tasks that faculty shirk. And so that was something that I didn't bring up in the session, but something that we think about a lot, because again, I don't like to say no to faculty. I'm there to help faculty and support faculty, but am I doing things in my day that are really things that I shouldn't be doing? And that I'm going to spend time doing these things, and I'm not going to have credibility at the end of the day because I'm not an academic.
So my wife listens to lots of podcasts, and she gave me this great idea about a lightning round. We're going to keep it really fun and simple just to get us into this. If you could have one superpower for one day, Sarah, what would it be?
Only for one day?
Only one day. You only get it for one day.
No sleep. I don't need to sleep.
For one day. I didn't see that
Imagine
coming.
what I could get done.
I love it. What about you? What would be your superpower for one day?
Invisibility.
That's perfect.
I just think that would be great, to be in rooms and hear what's going on, hear what would be said if I weren't in those rooms.
Mine's like the classic, I'd love to fly. So you guys are much more creative than me. All right, one more. If you could time travel, I think this is interesting, to any time in history, where would you go?
This isn't a lightning round because these are hard questions.
Oh, no, this is what, come on. Where would you go? There's probably a ton, but what would you pick? One thing.
Romayne, if you have an answer, you can go first.
All right, I'll do mine. You're going to think this is crazy. The dinosaur period, that's I've always been fascinated. What would that be like? But if you had to pick one, you'll get another one at a future time. Where would you want to go in history?
I don't know, back to the Louis XIV time.
I figured you'd want to be there. It's good wine, too,
yes,
at that time frame.
And in that area of France.
You knew. This is a big one for you, Sarah.
It's a very hard question,
We're going to come back to you on this.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to think about it.
All right. But I'm going to ask you again.
I know.
So have that in the background.
I'm thinking about
All
it.
right.
Yeah.
So stepping forward and stepping back, right? Tomorrow, or you're going to be stepping back or to be the post chair, and you're going to be stepping in. So the conversation, I think, it's useful to talk about this anyways, because I'm sure you're thinking about it. When you think about where EACUBO's come, because you've been involved, how many years have you been a part of EACUBO?
Oh, my. Over 13.
Who introduced you to this craziness?
Lynn Schaefer.
Oh,
well,
she's the one to blame.
And Mike Gower.
Mike Gower and Lynn Schaefer.
They got me involved.
They got you involved? Who got you involved, Sarah?
I think Nicole Trufant recommended me, and that could have been through Lynn, because I've only been part of EACUBO for a little less than 5 years, because I was part of SACUBO before that and part of CUCUBO before that.
Fascinating.
Because this is my fourth higher ed institution.
So Sarah may not know this, but when we found out that she was getting the role at Penn State and I was still at Rutgers, and Mike and I were getting ready to go to the Big Ten CFO conference, he said, and while we're there, we need to talk to Sarah about EACUBO.
Did you know
because
this?
she'd be great.
That's great.
Yeah, there was a full scale effort to get Sarah into the EACUBO family.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
What have you seen over the last couple of years where the EACUBO's come?
I think the last few years have been really interesting because I became chair not right at the end of the pandemic, but while people were still figuring out their post-pandemic needs and behaviors with respect to professional development, conference attendance, et cetera. And EACUBO has been really working hard to try to figure out what the needs of our members are in this time. One thing that we've realized is that during the pandemic, people made decisions to leave their jobs for a variety of reasons. A lot of people retired. Those positions weren't backfilled, and there really isn't a strong labor market, at least in my experience, for higher ed finance roles. It's been really difficult to backfill positions. And so over these last 2 years, we're finding that our members are doing more than they ever have done. And they just don't have the time to commit to coming to these conferences. And the things that they need, they're able to get in more on demand, real time. I need to know about something. Let me find a webinar or more instant information source. So that's been one of our challenges over the last few years. And I think that we're still talking about those things. We recently decided that we wouldn't have our spring workshop and instead try to have more local programming and do more webinars for our members because that's what we hear that they want. So I think we'll be trying a lot of new things, but it's been interesting to see that a lot of things get blamed on the pandemic, but they aren't necessarily because of the pandemic. They're because of other decisions that people made that then resulted in different work circumstances for all of us. So, the hybrid nature of work has changed. I think the way people think about their professional development. If I'm not going into the office, why do I want to go somewhere else? So I think it's been interesting.
Sara, from your perspective, what about this organization is important for the industry and for the people?
I feel like I owe so much to EACUBO and to all the regionals and EACUBO for that matter. I truly don't think I'd be where I am in my career if it wasn't for the networking and, frankly, what I've learned in the sessions. I think it's helped me to be more aware of opportunities that are out there, whether it's new systems, new processes, changes. I mean, we all go and get our education formally through college, but then there's not a lot of other resources out there to learn. And I find that these organizations really have helped make me the person I am. So the networking is really important, but also the education, I think, is vital.
I want to continue with this because it's always been my assessment that the people that step into leadership roles, volunteer on committees, all of that, this is such an incredible playground to learn about your own leadership. And I'm curious, what have you learned in being in this position to guide this association for the period of time you were in this role and are in this role? And how that also translates back to your professional identity. Because I think there's a beautiful connection here. I feel like this is a safe place to practice leadership.
Yeah, I think that's true. One thing that's, really evident in working with our board is, there's one person that is the chair, but the work that gets done is done by everybody. And you need everyone's voice to be heard because we represent such a vast array of institutions, sizes, their focus. And so we really need people to be involved. We need more people, more voices at the table when we are guiding an association that serves such diverse groups.
Yeah, it's always been my feeling that people are reluctant because they sort of see that this is taking on more work on top of their day job, but underestimate how much this contributes to their professional growth.
It's incredibly rewarding. And like Sara, I would not be where I am in my career if it hadn't been for the relationships that I built through EACUBO and the people that I've met and who championed me for roles that traditionally I might be considered unqualified for because of the background that I had in my previous jobs and my experience. But, this is incredibly necessary, I think, and especially where we're going. The opportunities are few and far between at the highest levels in higher ed finance. There's not a lot of turnover. And when there is turnover somewhere, there are a lot of people competing for those same spots. And so how do you differentiate yourself and who is helping you get to that next step? Those are all very, very critical questions to ask yourself. And EACUBO is an amazing place to find answers to those questions.
How have you found that you grow through this volunteer work outside of your role at Penn State?
We're already around a table, I would think, of a lot of high achievers. So I feel like I learn from my colleagues too. I don't have to be the first one to volunteer. I can do some self-reflection. I can learn how others are navigating these challenging times. I can be vulnerable and share. I think sometimes it's therapy being at these conferences just to know you're not alone. Because sometimes, frankly, being in the roles we're in can be a bit lonely at our organizations because we don't have a lot of people that we necessarily feel comfortable being a bit more vulnerable and sharing some of those challenges, whereas you come here and you've got peers and colleagues, and they'll be honest with you too. So I think that also helps because sometimes people you work with may not be as comfortable being in that role to provide feedback, whereas I think our peers here are more willing to do that. I've been both a mentee and a mentor, both at the regionals and the national level, and have found that extremely helpful.
As a mentor, you get to also practice what you preach. It's another great thing about having those opportunities. So what's about to happen is a handoff, right? And I see you smiling with this handoff. The current chair is always happy on this Monday. How are you feeling about? I'm sure it's a mixed blessing.
It is. I've really enjoyed the time that I've been on the board and in the chair role, but I'm also looking forward to continuing to support Sara as she takes on the chair role. And in the past chair role, you lead the governance committee, which is really important, helping to identify new board members and cultivate relationships and a pipeline for people to join us. So I think it's really important. And I'm looking forward to that next phase as much as I enjoyed the last 2 years.
So what do you hope to preserve from over the last couple of years, and the way that Romayne led through this period? I'm curious because I'm sure you're looking at this going, okay, what do I want to keep, and what I might want to do differently.
So I really appreciate how decisive Romayne is. I feel like we've made some hard decisions over the last 2 years, and none of us do them in a vacuum by any means. But the Program and Services Committee and the board are navigating some times that are not just at this moment, but potentially a real shift in higher education and how we learn and where we make our investments for professional development. And so us letting go of the workshop, I think, was really hard. We talked about it for many, many years. And so I think what I'll continue to preserve is being flexible and nimble and thinking about where we're going while also not taking too long to make those decisions, because 2 years goes by quickly. And frankly, for the financial sustainability of the organization, we can't afford to just let some of those decisions linger. And that's what I mean about the decisiveness. So I think a lot of it is continuing with the flexibility and the listening to know what's next.
Beautiful. How have you grown? You've been chair for how long?
2 years.
How have you grown in these last 2 years?
Well, I came into this role at the same time I was changing jobs and taking on a much different set of responsibilities in my professional life. So I think I've grown in prioritization of things and learning how to not say yes to everything, but understanding how important the things that I've already said yes to are to fulfill in terms of those commitments. So I'm really surrounded at EACUBO by such a great group of people. And again, like I said before, many of them are instrumental in having gotten me to where I am. So I am very fortunate to be able to be surrounded by people who support me and provide that feedback and encouragement. And like Sara said, we all kind of talk ourselves through these tough times together. And, I'd like to think that I've become a better listener and a more empathetic leader, especially, with the pandemic and the, next few years after that. But that's for others to say, but I would like to think that that's true.
Nice. What are you looking forward to over these next 2 years in terms of what's possible here?
So I have a great vice chair coming in as well. Audra is going to be, I think, a wonderful support system. And I think learning from Romayne, learning from Audra, we have 5 new board members coming in, and we all represent different sectors. So I think we learn a lot from each other. I think we've got a great pathway for learning more from our members. Lori's doing a great job, I think, trying to better understand what our members need and encouraging them to come. It's still surprising, I think, as to how many don't take advantage of EACUBO. We have a lot of new first attendees here, which is always exciting to me, and trying to encourage them to come back and understand the value of being here, which again, networking is huge. So I think I'm just going to continue to try to grow as a leader, learn from others, and try to listen to what our members need and encourage us all, which we'll do naturally, but just to be flexible, to adjust, to meet our memberships, help them overcome the challenges that we're all inevitably going to continue to see over the next 2 years in the industry.
And see how important it is to find these windows to come physically together face to face with people that we don't get to see, where we can be more candid with each other, maybe, because it's sometimes difficult in our own organizations to say the things that we're thinking or feeling. And for a generation to recognize the importance and the power of this. And I do believe people see it once they're here. The challenge is getting them to come. That's always the challenge.
Yeah, I think it validates some of the hard decisions we're making too, because many of us in financial roles are more pragmatic. We're more the ones to be maybe a little less risky, while at the same time needing to be innovative and creative. And I think just hearing from some of our colleagues as to how they're managing some of this and that they too are managing some of these challenges, it gives you comfort that you're not by yourself.
That's it. And I can tell you that as a partner, I recognize a difference in the orientation to supporting partners in this conference already. And I think that's also a very important thing.
Well, that was intentional. So I'm very happy to hear that you noticed that difference, because a few years ago, we started talking about how to engage the business partners outside of the exhibit hall and the sponsorship support. What can we learn from each other? How can we utilize their tremendous amounts of knowledge for the benefit of our members? So that's been something that we've focused on. And I'm again, happy to hear that you're seeing that.
So I know that you're going on to CBS News to have another one of these, but for your closing EACUBO before tomorrow, anything you want to say to wrap this up for yourself?
It's just been a great experience, and I can't stress enough how valuable it is to get involved with organizations like EACUBO, but anyone who's in our region and in any kind of business officer role, regardless of where you are in your career, there's something here for you, and I encourage you to reach out and take advantage of it.
Anything you want to say as we wrap up?
I just want to thank Romayne. I've learned a lot from Romayne, and you mentioned sponsors. I think our natural inclination as more financial accounting folks is to be a little bit more introverted and not necessarily be comfortable walking around and knowing people. And I have tremendous respect for Romayne's leadership and encouraging us to engage more with sponsors so that we can learn, but also because there is an interdependency. We need our sponsors to continue to support these professional development opportunities, and they also help our organizations thrive.
And it strengthens our connection to the mission. And that's the other thing that's so important for us, too, to recognize. So, Sarah, you know what I'm going to ask you, right? How we started this?
Oh, yes.
You've been thinking about this the whole time.
I have been thinking about it, and I have an answer. I think I would go back because I have a tremendous amount of respect for women who have led the path before us. I go back to when the women were first getting to vote, and that whole movement and how much courage they must have had, because I think it's tempting sometimes for me to take it for granted. And I think it would be really good to see what they triumphed over going through those moments.
That's a serious, thoughtful. You needed an hour for that one. That's a good one.
I did.
I love that one. Thank you, both of you, for what you do and the way that you're partnering and have partnered. I'm really excited for EACUBO looking forward. And stay tuned for what's next.
And thank you for all your support, Howard.
Yeah,
You're
Howard,
welcome.
thank you. You are an EACUBO institution.
Thank you. I will accept that.
And for our own institutions, I think.
Yes.
Well,
You
it's
have helped many
truly
of
a
us.
privilege.
So
Have
thank
a
you.
great rest of your conference.
Thank you, Howard. You too.
You as well.